All right, it's just about 19 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. And what we're about to discuss, it affects every single one of us. Whether you're white, black, pink, blue, tall, short, fat, small, anything, food prices affects us all. So we just wanted to check in with the head of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Rajiv Diptee, just to find out what those prices on the shelves look like at this time. Good morning to you, Rajiv.
Good morning, Natalie. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
And a happy new year to you, my dear. Always a pleasure talking to you, by the way.
Same to you, and I extend that to the rest of the morning crew at the Now team.
All right, nice. So, Rajiv, talk to us because, you know, we saw the government make its move to try to reduce the food prices by removing VAT off basic food items and a lot of things that we use every day. Has that translated into savings, you know, when somebody comes to shop, or is it that the constant rising in the prices are making it difficult to see that benefit?
Well, to start off with, certainly, Natalie, I do believe that where you observe the prices of the imported goods, because we have to remember that we're a very reliant net importer of goods in Trinidad and Tobago, we're import dependent. Certainly what we've seen and observed is that the removal of VAT is a net positive, because regardless of the fact that there have been increases in the imported goods, and certainly those inputs of production that are also imported, that we have seen a reduction in the prices, because that would effectively mean that 12.5% has been removed where the core food basket is concerned. So it does translate into savings for the customers, regardless of the fact that the price increases are being passed on. It is something that does assist the customer. We can relate that directly to flour, for example, where we've seen the 10 to 20% increase by national flour mills. I think it's something like 10 to 15% after the intervention by the Ministry of Trade. And that means that still benefits from 12.5% reduction in savings from your food bill. So this move by the government did help. We have seen food prices continue to increase, and this is for a number of reasons. Certainly, adverse weather conditions in the latter part of 2021 had an effect on commodities markets such as grain, wheat, and the inputs of production, where in particular flour is concerned. So we saw that the largest provider of flour to the nation, National Flour Mills, and by subsequent Nutrimix also follows suit with price increases. This is an international trend worldwide. We've seen in major markets, especially North America, that meat, poultry, eggs, fish, these have all seen price increases to customers. We've seen some iconic brands undergo price increases for a number of challenges, including labor shortages, transportation costs that have increased, not just on the ocean, but also by land. And we've seen a number of conditions, all in some way directly or indirectly related to the pandemic, have effects on the price increases of certain goods. So this is a narrative that is continuing from 21 into 22. And this is something that, you know, it can't be helped at this time. I think that a lot of local importers and distributors are trying their best to work with prices, but the reality is that there still is a very high demand. There's not a very good or adequate supply at this time, and it's creating artificial shortages in some line of products, so that you're going to see prices remain in place and perhaps still going up as we have that situation, especially where the transportation and the freight and insurance costs and the container shipping continues to develop.
You know, do you believe that psychologically we can help people to recognize the gains that they're getting from this 12.5% VAT removal, maybe by just still, you know, putting it on the items, you know, with the cost with VAT or without VAT? Because I constantly hear people say that, you know, they're not seeing it, they're not feeling it, because every time they go to the supermarket, something has increased. And whether it's on that particular item, it's that they just, you know, mentally or psychologically, they're just seeing the increases in terms of what's coming out of their pockets.
Interestingly, you should say that, Natalie, because when we did our post-budget forum at October last year, when this measure came into effect, we calculated the savings to customers based on what the basket of goods would look like now that the VAT has been removed. And the savings was phenomenal. We had a basket of goods that cost something like $313, and with the reduction in VAT, there was something like about $268. So there was about $35 or $40 in savings. But this compounded over time does give back to the customers. While we see that some of the price increases are continuing, and we have to understand that it's a situation that's out of our hands. I keep saying, if we don't grow it, if we don't make it, if we're not processing it, then we have no choice but to pay for it at the prices on the market that we continue to fetch. And, the consumer tastes and preferences is a big part of this equation, because certainly we won't be chasing down the goods unless the consumers continue to demand them. So this is still a situation where I think that the administration is trying their best right now, certainly where the issue of VAT and the removal passes on the savings to the customers. And that is something we continue to work with. I think the real concern is that, our local suppliers, our local importers, that we don't, we continue to seek import substitutes for products in the market that we feel may be out of the reach of the consumer. But certainly, we should still be grateful to the extent that our shelves are still fully stocked. We're still able to put goods into the baskets of consumers, and we haven't had any situations, Natalie, where any of our citizens have been going hungry because they haven't had access to food stuff.
Yeah, but Rajiv, I am thinking to myself that it might be important if we have some mechanisms in place, just to discourage price gouging, because the reality is the average consumer or customer doesn't have the wherewithal to determine what the price increases along the production line or along the transport line, what those increases look like, what they are. And therefore, somebody can just say, well, then you know what? The shipping cost has improved. Grain has, shipping cost has increased. Grain price has increased. But we don't know, the percentages. And therefore, when we come to the shelves, we are getting increases that we don't even know if they're justifiable.
Well, these increases are coming so thick and fast, Natalie, because in the midst of the pandemic, sometimes we struggle to keep up with it. And I think what you're describing is something that consumer affairs really should be tooting the horn on. And this is something that they have an obligation. They were very much proactively in the field when the VAT exercise was conducted. And I think that they do issue quarterly updates, but the frequency of and communication of these updates. What I can say from the members of the Supermarket Association is that the price gouging aspect is not something I'm particularly worried about, because in this age of social media, customers pick up very quickly on it, and they're very keen to post it on social media. And that store, whose institutional integrity and reputation that they continue to hold high, is permanently damaged. So I am very certain that none of the members of the Supermarket Association engage in that kind of activity. Certainly, though, we have concerns with delinquents in the market, but the good thing for the customers is that this sector is so fiercely competitive. It's very saturated. There are lots of options for the customers to shop around. There are lots of deals and specials. So I'm not too concerned about that, but we certainly see, and I commend a lot of my members for this, that the competition, they very much look for the customers to come into their stores and purchase the goods. So I'm very confident that they will have continued specials and promotions to try to push things towards the customers. And I've also been in talking to some of my members, and they've also let me know, listen, their main focus is the community, and that they try to keep the prices as accessible as possible once they have received the goods from the suppliers.
Are we seeing any items, or what are the items that have significant increases on them, as far as you're aware?
Well, we've seen poultry prices increase. I think I just last month, not even last week, I think last month, we saw the price per pound of chicken move from $9.50 to $13.50. We've seen, and this is something that we observed in North America, similarly with price increases. So it's not like it's native to Trinidad and Tobago. Where the core food basket of goods is concerned, we always have concerns on cooking oil, flour, sugar, and it's something that continues to move. It's still benefiting from the reduction of 12.5%. Very importantly, that is removed from in the final equation of your bill at the register. And that is something, when we talk about the core food basket and we talk about those things, we try to keep with care on the shelves those goods that are considered very basic for the vulnerable consumer, because those that class of customer, that level of person that's coming into the store, you really want to ensure that they are able to buy goods for their families, because it's not just food stuff that's going up, Natalie. Of course, it's pharmaceuticals, it's it's everything right now due to the inflationary pressures being experienced by the pandemic. So we want to play our part to ensure that goods remain accessible to the most vulnerable consumers.
Mm-hmm. And, based on where we are now and even where we are with the pandemic, we're about, 2 years in. Do you think we can see any kind of regularization or even a reduction in these prices maybe over the next 6-8 months?
So yeah, that's a great question, and I'll tell you what my opinion is on it. And this is something that we're looking at based on international trends. So the premise for opening up the economies and the increased operations, because remember, we still have factories operating at 50%, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but worldwide. And we have COVID-19 protocols in place across certain territories. What's really going to help liberalize these conditions is the increased vaccination rates, the number of cases, the decrease in the number of deaths. So we're looking at a situation right now, and everything is a bit related to the vaccination rates, the uptake, of course, the variants that continue to linger, and what the effects that these have, especially in terms of travel restrictions, because it means what ports of entry, we could get goods at, and how that continues to affect the wider economic conditions. Even though the crude is up, it's increased transportation costs on land in major importing territories that we import from. We've also seen too that the drought and the adverse weather conditions that we've seen in a lot of territories has shifted prices up. So we need to get cycles of production to go back up. We need to see some stabilization, especially in the demand and supply curves. And my forecast for this, Natalie, it will take 6 to 9 months during this period of 2022 to get to some level of where we see these narratives going with vaccination, with demand and supply, and all of this will have a corollary effect into stabilizing the markets, because it's at this moment the market is still very active.
Rajiv, considering that we're so import dependent, do you believe that there's anything that the local community can do to help with the alleviation of these food price increases?
You wouldn't believe, Natalie, we've been encouraging people to do their own kitchen gardens, but from the side of the local, import substitution is really what we've been talking about for over a year now, at least for myself. And this is something I feel very strongly about. However, the policies and the framework needed to couch this into something that can actually happen. I was talking to a colleague of mine from Arima, and he also rears his own livestock and poultry for the stores, and he lost an entire his entire livestock, and the little things like predial larceny and the avenues to recourse, they're just simply not good enough right now. So it deters people from getting into things.
So in other words,
You
we
know,
don't have that enabling environment to encourage us to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that import substitution.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the further to that episode. I was on a call with the then DCP McDonald Jacob, and you know he let us know that the challenges faced by the Pradial larceny unit, and it was not very you know, vigorous and reassuring. And but he was quite knowledgeable, and he was able to assist. But to the average person, how much confidence is that built to get into agriculture, to get into things and initiatives that, you know, can really redound to import substitution? So it's things that like this, the little things, the basics that need to be focused on before we can get into bigger projects. There are we've seen some very good projects. I look at Berry Cove that took place in Tobago with the strawberries, berries, and they're looking to support the domestic market as well as create foreign exchange through exports. And it's more things like that we're looking at. Even from the side of the Supermarket Association, we're willing to get into agriculture and getting to agro processing and getting into farming. There are a lot of opportunities. However, it takes work not just from the agricultural side, but also work with the consumer, because as I suggested earlier, their tastes and preferences determine what ultimately comes out onto the market.
And
so
have we seen any kind of shift in those tastes and preferences, you know, as a result of the increase in prices?
No. And that's very important, because I was on a call in the later part of last year, it was probably October, with some of the business sector organizations in Guyana, Jamaica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and they have some of the same issues that we have. And it's not that the import substitutes in some of these territories aren't actually available, they are. But to get someone to change their preferences, for example, where flour is concerned, to move towards healthier or more cheaper versions of it, such as cassava flour, oats flour, wheat flour, and you know, it's not going to go mainstream. People tastes and preferences are couched over decades. Even with cereals, we're seeing customers down trading. You know, you're moving from Special K to Universal now, and it's something that's just going to continue to take place. So, you know, where the market has its own calibrations in terms of checks and balances, and if prices do get out of the consumer's reach, they're going to create the substitution organically by choosing different products, which will ultimately remove the products that are out of their reach.
All right, Rajiv, we do have to leave it there, but thank you so much for speaking with us. And let's hope that Consumer Affairs gets on the ball to see if they can put mechanisms in place, you know, just to ensure that, you know, if there's a 10% increase internationally, that we're not paying a 50% increase on the shelves.
Thank you, Natalie. It's always a pleasure, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you so much, Rajiv Diptee, there, President of the Supermarket Association.